Now, this is why we're waiting for this price action to happen. Is the debasement currency is a real thing. This is the best asset we've ever been given. It protects us from this. Liquidity is the driver. We're just about the point where liquidity is starting to really increase. We're seeing the Chinese really lead it, but we're seeing global M2 rising around the world. So yeah, it's right here, right now, and it's the most important thing you probably don't know about macroeconomics that you need to know about.
In a recent interview on Zebu, Raoul delved into 3 key topics shaping Bitcoin's future: central bank rate cuts, the expanding liquidity cycle, and Bitcoin's potential to enter the banana zone. Currently, Bitcoin is trading at approximately $65,000, showing a 1% decrease in the past 24 hours, but a 4% increase over the last 30 days. These discussions are especially critical as the crypto market reacts to shifting global financial dynamics, including the upcoming US elections and ongoing debates on crypto regulation. Before we dive into this insightful conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel. Now let's hear more from Raoul.
What I've learned in my career, it took me a while to learn this, is what captures people's attention is fear. What the outcome is the opposite. 99% of the, well, 3% of the time over the last 100 years, let's say the US has been in recession, 3%. Yet people anchor on the fears. So they anchor on, through my whole life, it's like, well, Russia's gonna send nukes or this is gonna happen. None of these things generally happen. So what I've learned is actually to be an optimist through these things. My particular view on most of the things happening right now is that I actually believe, contrary to almost everybody else's opinion, that the US and China and Europe have agreed what to do with Taiwan, and that's to give it back. Give it back is not theirs to give, but to allow China to do it. I think that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, going to Beijing randomly, he's a non-geopolitical character. He turns up at Beijing. What he should see is the government of one of the regions. He sees Xi. Xi is not going to see, being the second most powerful person in the world, he doesn't see the governor of California who's just popped into, he went with something. And then he brought Xi back to California, not to the United Nations, not to DC, not to anything else, but to California. The US is building 3 TSMC plants. The world does not function without Taiwan Semi. All of the AI future, everything we understand, every computer, every phone, nothing functions without these guys. They're the most strategically important company in the world. The US is building 3 plants, Germany 1, Japan 1. They're all done in about 3 years. China, nobody can go to war with Taiwan because we will lose the semiconductor manufacturing. Those foundries are foundational to the future of the world. Everybody knows it. So the only answer, because everybody loses in that case, is a compromise. Then we saw Xi go to Europe. So immediately goes to Europe, and the Europeans obviously have to be involved in this, and they asked one thing, which is everyone's making demand of each other. There's a lot of horse trading that needs to happen to make a mega deal, and their one thing is obviously we want Putin stopped. If you remember, Xi came straight back from Europe. The first person who went to see him was Putin. Immediately the press leaks came out of AP saying, I'm prepared to stop advancing. Somewhere within this, I think there was a big, very positive upside surprise that comes out of this. Because if you game it all out, there is literally no way that anybody's going to go to war just when we're about to bring AGI into the world. It's just not going to happen. You can't do it. And everybody knows it because everybody needs it and wants that technology more than any other technology that has ever been except the nuclear bomb. They're of equal importance in terms of discoveries. So that, I think, is happening. So therefore that neutralizes, I think, a lot of the Russian situation. The Middle East situation, I'm also more positive about that as well. Okay, I'm less sure of this one, but it has been my opinion for a few years now, 3 years, maybe 2 years, that Saudi, Israel, and Iran did a deal, which is Saudi has been very strong in, listen, we need to rebuild this region in a way that's more commercial. MBS has been a big thought leader in pushing this through. Obviously, Abu Dhabi and Dubai want this as well. And they've seen Israel as a partner, and they've been in talks a lot, and they think of it as their Silicon Valley as part of the Middle East. And they started talking to Iran on many of these issues. Now, what's been interesting is, as Israel's had the opportunity to try and rid itself of ongoing situations being complicated for them over a long period of time, the retaliation things with Iran over Hezbollah has been super interesting, because the Iranians have kind of called them up, sent a carrier pigeon, said, we might send a bomb, so if you just put up your thing, right, that's not how warfare happens. That is prearranged. Let's see what the Israeli response is. My guess it will be equally prearranged. If that is the case, then it's a signal that this whole Middle East situation, there are more people trying to clean it up in different ways. So I'm actually more positive about all of these than most people are.
As we just heard, Raoul Pal discussed the influence of central bank rate cuts on Bitcoin and their connection to the liquidity cycle. Now let's hear him delve deeper into Bitcoin's potential to enter the banana zone, a crucial phase for significant price movements. He also explores how institutional adoption is driving Bitcoin's growth, offering valuable insights into its next major move. Let's listen to Raoul Pal's perspective on this evolving market scenario.
Inflation was the 2022 story.
Yeah.
And 2021 story. So all we've seen, if we look at the US inflation numbers came out today, everyone's like, oh my God, they came out 0.1%, more than expectations. Look at the numbers, 2.5 years, every single number has been lower. Inflation, headline inflation in the US is 2.4%. It's going to keep falling. So in Europe, it's been falling. In some countries, it's already been negative. So I think inflation is a story of the past. Now, inflation, don't forget, doesn't mean our prices go down. You're still paying that ridiculous price at the supermarket and the restaurant and everything else. So that is real. Wages did readjust somewhat, but the inflation story, i.e. the fear of what it does to financial markets and the Fed and Bank of England, whoever raising rates, they're all cutting rates now, and they'll be cutting rates for another year, year and a half. Some faster than others, depending on the structure of their labor markets and other stuff. So again, optimist. The question was about how I keep track of liquidity and flows and how it impacts the price of crypto. This is all part of the banana zone. This is all part of the big thesis that everybody knows.
We'll come on to that. Spoilers.
Yeah. So many people have got into this space because they understand that there is something going on where wages don't go up a lot. The central banks seem to do stuff and asset prices go up and your kind of future self gets poorer. An asset is purely future deferred consumption. Something you buy today that you can sell later. You're expected to make a return on it to compensate for locking up your money over a period of time. Problem is these things are getting more and more and more expensive. So when I first started in investment banking as a 20-something-year-old, I bought an apartment in London and it was about 3.5 times my salary. If I look at the average investment banking, young kid in investment banking now, and the same apartment, it's probably 10 times salary. Why? And this is actually to do with central bank debasement that happened from 2008 onwards. When they reset interest rates to zero, the world broke with debt. Most of the countries, if you look at total debt, including private sector debts, most countries are 200 or 300% of GDP in debt. The US is 380% of GDP in debt. The world is actually 400% of GDP in debt. And so what they've done to manage the payments of these debts is the private sector debts have been slowing everywhere. And what we've seen is using monetary liquidity or the balance sheet of the central banks and other things to debase currency. And they're debasing it by about 8% a year. Debasing a currency lowers the purchasing power versus scarce assets. And what happens is the scarce assets optically look like they're going up in value, but what you're actually dealing with is debasement of your savings and of currency overall. And so once I figured what was going on out, I started looking at the world through the lens of debasement of currency, and liquidity. Liquidity is the thing that causes it. And so what I found is that, in answer to your question, liquidity, measurable liquidity that we have at my research service, Global Macro Investor, and is also found on Real Vision, is it explains 97.5% of the movement of the NASDAQ and explains 87% of the movement of Bitcoin and of all of crypto. It's all based on liquidity. Liquidity is the driver. Now, what we've got, why crypto outperforms, let's say, the S&P 500, which is also driven by liquidity. The S&P 500 basically just moves by the debasement rate, which is 8%, which is the hurdle rate you need to earn on your assets before you're even making, your future self is going to get wealthier. If not, you're not making money. And then we've got inflation at 2 or 3%. And what you're doing here is crypto is also a secular trend. It's the fastest adoption of any technology the world has ever seen. It's the highest performing asset class of all time in the shortest period of time. You know, Bitcoin's average return is 148% a year. That includes 3 80% drawdowns. So that we've got a secular trend and debasement of currency happening at the same time. Liquidity is driving it. So where are we now in the liquidity cycle? So what's interesting is liquidity is driven by the refinancing of government debts. The government debts are every 4 years. They reset them back in 2008. And we are at the point, and this is what the kind of macro summer and macro fall that I talk about, crypto summer, crypto fall, is the point that these debts need to get refinanced. In the US, we've got $10 trillion of debt needs to be refinanced. Now, interest rates are here. Trend rate of GDP growth that generates the income to pay the interest is here. They're gonna have to bring down interest rates. And they're gonna have to inject liquidity to finance all of these debts. And that usually means issuing more debt. So that process is the process of liquidity. We're right in the teeth of it now. This is where it starts. So we've seen, and it's not just the US, it's China, it's Japan, it's Europe, it's the UK, it's Canada, it's everybody. And they all do it at the same time, and the Chinese have gone first. The US have cut rates, everyone else has cut rates. So that liquidity phase, using forward-looking indicators, and I use financial conditions, which lead it by about 5 months, just say it's up only from here.
To watch the full interview, check out the link in the description. Raoul Pal shares valuable insights into Bitcoin's future, the influence of central bank actions, and the potential for explosive growth in the crypto market. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think the upcoming US elections will impact Bitcoin? How do you believe central bank rate cuts will affect crypto prices in 2024? If you enjoyed this discussion, please like, subscribe, and share our video for more engaging content exploring the innovative world of decentralized technologies.